So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the new fears that the UK will breach international law with the plan to tear up the protocol. So the legislation hasn't come out yet. This video is being recorded on the 11th. The legislation is meant to come out on the 13th. We're still waiting for that. But the government's main objective is to only get one bit of legal advice, essentially to be the only show in town for their legal advice and not talk to anyone else, therefore legitimising their kind of take on if it's legal to violate the protocol. So new fears raised in government that the UK will breach international law if it ploughs ahead with plans to tear up the protocol. In leaked correspondence, and this is where it gets quite confusing because it's been worded really weird. But I think what the legal advice is that it would be very difficult for the government to credibly argue that there is no alternative to unilaterally overriding the protocol. So I think this sentence lower here in green should be above this paragraph, if that makes sense. So I think what the legal advice is, a senior legal advisor saying, is that it's very difficult to credibly argue there is no alternative to the protocol. That's my take on it, and I've spoken to a lot of people on it, trying to figure out what this actually means, and that's the best that all of us combined really got. So if you've got a different kind of take on it, feel free to mention it in the comments. It's just the way the journalist and the way it's been leaked out is very odd. Separately, it is believed that James Eddy, the government's independent barrister on the legal issues, has not been consulted on whether a planned bill would break international law. Now, the government are denying that they haven't consulted this gentleman here, Sir James Eddy, who is their independent barrister. Sky News reported that Sir James had indicated his belief that it would be very hard for the UK to defend its unilateral move as legal, while a former cabinet minister told The Independent it was unprecedented not to consult the first Treasury Council on such an issue. Now, I bet you're wondering who the first Treasury Council is. The first Treasury Council is Sir James, the independent barrister. Had to Google that one. Johnson denied in the Commons that Sir James had not been consulted, telling MPs reports this morning are not correct. So the question is, where are these reporters getting their sources from? His official spokesperson later confirmed that the PM was referring to Sir James Eddy. So it might be the case that Johnson isn't telling the truth here because he's a liar, but his spokesperson did hint that Johnson was referring to Sir James Eddy, telling reporters it was not correct to say he had not been consulted in that process. So if it's the case that Sir James Eddy or any other senior legal advisors for the government have said that the government would struggle to credibly argue that violating the protocol was their only actions, their only means of legal action essentially, they're going to be in trouble here. However, the spokesperson was unable to say whether Sir James had been asked to give his opinion on the merits of the legal advice which the government chose to accept. So it's very easy that the government might be playing tricks there. They might have consulted him on something, but they might not have asked Sir James Eddy what his actual opinion is on the merits of the legal advice which the government has chosen to accept. So the government might have taken Suella Braverman's take on the protocol. She's apparently said it's legal, legal, not illegal. And so they haven't actually asked Sir James Eddy, is that the case? Legislation expected to come out in days, so a few days. However, it will go. This legislation will go further than border controls, targeting the role of the European Court of Justice in overseeing the dispute. So maybe the UK government will push for more quote independent arbiters or some other mechanism to deal with disputes, and aiming to restore the UK's ability to decide VAT rates, which I always found a weird one. I'm sure it's probably done some sort of competitive stuff, but yeah. There's also the mention of dual regulation as well, which I don't think is mentioned in this article, but the government are pushing for effectively Northern Ireland to use dual legislation, so they can either use the UK's legal framework for manufacturing goods or the EU's legal framework, which doesn't make sense considering that Northern Ireland can export both to GB and the EU, so surely they should be following the EU's rules. Braverman, the Attorney General, has concluded the legislation is legal, so that's why they might not have consulted Sir James Eddy, because he could have picked holes in Braverman's arguments, which I think most people could do. But she rejected calls to publish her legal opinion. In fact, she got very, very angry at a Labour MP for asking for what how her legal opinion got out, her legal advice, effectively. The EU argues the protocol itself protects the Good Friday Agreement by avoiding a hard land border in Ireland. The legislation is also under threat in the Commons from Tory MPs who oppose it and will now be tempted to use it as a flashpoint to boost the chances of toppling Johnson, because there are still some Tory MPs, not many, who aren't completely spineless charlatans. I say the word completely being important there, and would fight back against the government brazenly breaking international law like this. It's just a question of how many. The bill is expected to introduce a dual regulatory regime, which we've mentioned before, which again, it's going to, that in itself would kill the protocol. Honestly, there's not much more worth talking about in the article, but the point being is that the dual regulation alone would kill the article. I mean the protocol. But the simple fact is, it very much looks like Johnson's gotten one bit of legal advice, which is from Suella Braverman, and is choosing to stick by that. I could be wrong on that. I'll happily accept if I am. But essentially, he's gone to the lawyer that would give him the legal opinion he wants, and he's not going to talk to anyone else. It very much looks like he hasn't consulted the independent barrister on this, and I think that's purely because he does not want the argument to get holes picked in, because that will come out in court. That the government will advise that they're on shaky legal ground and their actions were wrong. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. If you're interested in the stuff that's going to come out on Monday around the protocol, definitely subscribe for that. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.